welcome to 2022 plus a couple of months.
Right. And welcome back to another edition of Telling the Show, the art of it's our own personal chance to screw up live on the air, as evident by me. We're a different sort of screenwriting podcast because we're struggling screenwriters ourselves, and we're trying to share our knowledge, learn from others, and maybe gamify things a little bit, and have a little fun with this. Because as we all know, screenwriting is a lonely art, not necessarily the most fun art, but as entertainers ourselves, because why else would we write? We do want to at least have some sense of fun because it's only one life, folks. YOLO. We're saying YOLO, as the kids say.
Wow, as the kids say.
As the kids say. I'm staring down 47. I can't ignore it anymore.
Well, yes, we are different, but you know what's not different? My fear of networking.
We really got to work on that. I think we've had an episode or two about that, haven't we?
We have, and it hasn't gotten better. Like I can go into a room of, $1 million producers and pitch the crap out of anything, live theater or my stuff, but go into the parties. I suck so bad. It's like, in all those movies, there's that awkward friend that kind of walks up weirdly. That's me the entire time. Okay.
You know what? I think everyone's that at one point or another. The ones that are the life of the party still, can't get away from the party. I don't think they stopped partying. They started one party and are so afraid of going back to being awkward that they still, keep the party going in their head 24/7.
I mean, there's a lot going on in my head. It's not a party though.
You know what? I got a great t-shirt from a friend of mine once for my birthday, and it said, "I don't have voices in my head. I have theme music." And I really think that's so very true.
It's so very true.
Sadly apropos. Sadly apropos. So who we got on tonight, Denise?
We're going to be talking about networking because, I want to be better. Right? We all want to be better. So we're going to talk about the art of networking, and we're going to get back to the basics of writing. And we're going to do that with writer and producer Paul Zeidman. Welcome, Paul.
Well, thanks, guys. It's wonderful to be here. I hope I can shine some light on your networking troubles.
More of a networking fear, but it's okay. We'll go with trouble.
Well, let's start with the first thing. You don't have anything to be afraid of. Everybody is just as nervous about it as you, but some people just handle it a little better.
Yeah. My it's so I could think of a million scenarios where I walk up and I'm like, hey, I'm like, I feel like I'm a cross between a Family Guy character and a 70s roommate, like, hey, how you doing?
As long as you're not doing the finger guns, I think you're in good shape.
I totally just did them.
Wait a minute. I'm sorry, Denise, if you totally went, how you doing? I mean, honestly, I think that would win points because, Friends is having this whole nostalgic renaissance right now. Just saying.
But I don't write Friends, so far from.
I don't know that was necessarily the point, but that's okay.
Okay.
Moving on, let's introduce Paul Zeidman to our audience here. He's an award-winning screenwriter, blogger, podcaster, so he's in good company here, of course, with the goal of taking the audience on a roller coaster ride they can't wait to get on again. Wow, I love that. I love that quote because that's basically my mantra as well. So, welcome, Paul, and as we look to your wisdom, I want to take a moment to point out, as we've got it here on the screen, maximums.blog.
You're close. You're very close. Maximumz.blog.
Yeah.
A lot of people have said, why is it maximums? I said, that's because, you can't really put a space in a website address. So the best I could do was maximumz.blog. So I always make a point of having to tell people that's exactly what it's called. So it is the Maximum Z blog. Oh gosh, I've been doing that since 2009. And just to kind of put it in perspective, when I started it, I began it with the intention, I'm going to post something every day. You know how long that lasted? 2 weeks. Because it's exhausting. Because you think trying to work on a screenplay every day is tiring. Try doing that and trying to post maybe 500 to 750 words about screenwriting each day. I'm sure other people might be able to do it, but not this guy. So I narrowed it down to 2 days a week, and then a couple of years ago, just went to 1 day a week, and I post on Fridays, and it's been a lot of fun. I've had some great responses to some of my posts. And what's really nice is that I get responses literally from all over the world. I've got a lot of readers in the US and Canada and the UK and Germany and Australia and a couple in China, a couple in Africa. It's amazing that, something that I write here in my little office at home, that someone on the other side of the planet could take a look at in an hour, or they could look at it instantaneously right after I hit publish. And what's even better is they can respond to it. And that's just so cool. And I mean, it's fantastic for screenwriters to be around in this age, because there is so much available for you to work with. And we can tie this back to networking, because I'm that kind of clever guy, that you can use the internet to your advantage. It really comes down to how you want to use it and how you can approach using it.
I've very much enjoyed your blog. I read it. It's fun.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I like the GPS one. That was my favorite one recently. Yeah. So let's talk about social media since we're there. We live in this world of social media. I mean, this podcast is on like 5 different forms of social media. I personally am not on as many platforms as our podcast is. So I think I might have to change that. But I feel like, we have, I don't know, there's some generational gaps, I feel, as far as getting yourself on social media. And there's also the fear, like how much is too much? But I think as far as a career, it's a really interesting networking tool. I've met so many people and created and have been culturing these relationships on various social media platforms that I would never get to talk to anybody from ILM. But, I do now, because I reached out and I said hello and I was like, hey, I would really like to connect because of these reasons. And now I have I'm building this contact list. So I definitely think there's a place. And I think it's something we might have to at some point teach how to do properly, with the caveat that whatever you post on social media is going to be there for the rest of your life. So
no, that's a great point. And I think the points you make about using it to expand your personal network, that is one of the best ways you can approach it. Screenwriting Twitter is a fantastic resource because it is other writers who are, for the most part, in the same situation that all of us are. We are trying to get established. We're trying to make connections. We're trying to break into the industry. And the best suggestion that I can make is be honest and be truthful when you post, because you don't want to present yourself as something you're not. I've seen a couple of people who say, they have big credits to their name, and then you go on to IMDb or IMDb Pro and look them up, and there's nothing there.
Right.
And so why you can't help but think, why would you say that sort of thing? That you need to be the person that you want to present to the rest of the world, and just being honest and open, and always a little self-deprecating couldn't hurt either. But try to enjoy it. And one of the best pieces of advice I can offer: always make it about the other person. Because a friend of mine put this so succinctly, and it's stuck with me ever since. He said, imagine you were at a cocktail party and someone comes up to you and says, you don't know me, and they shove their card in your face and they say, but I want you to help me.
Right.
And that's what a lot of people online do, because I will maybe follow somebody on Twitter, and within a minute, I'll get a DM from them saying, hey, thanks for following me. Check out my Kickstarter program. Can you donate to my film? Do you know any producers? It's all of this sudden, I open the door and they feel like they're entitled to suddenly demand things from me or ask me for favors. They have not gone through the process of trying to establish a professional relationship. And that's what you are trying to do, because you want to present yourself as a professional And really on social media, that's a fantastic way to do it. Always make it about the other person. If someone follows me on Twitter, I will follow them back, and I'll usually send a message saying, hey, thanks for the follow. How's your writing going? How's it going with your latest project? What are you working on? Because I never want to be that kind of person who is so in your face, like, love me. Don't you just think I'm fantastic? You want to make them feel like they're an equal, that you're both professionals about this. And also, what writer doesn't like to talk about their stuff? Because
Right.
if you got back to them and said, hey, what are you working on? Chances are they'll get back and say, oh, I just working on this second draft, or I'm developing a short, or hey, I just signed a contract to to direct my first micro budget feature. And I'll respond, hey, that's great, fantastic, good luck with it. And if they want to ask me about my stuff, great. But if not, I'm not going to be hurt by that.
You see, that's a great point to point out, is that it's an exchange. And if that's a true exchange, it's almost the same as starting a relationship or a friendship with like anybody from the other. There's a person on the other side of that two-person exchange, and you really want to make sure that you're recognizing what's going on with them in order for that to be a continued exchange. It's almost like basic communication 101.
Exactly. Next, and you also, again, you want to put things in, I don't want to say be a Pollyanna about it, but you want to be positive. You want to be encouraging for the other person, because a lot of times, especially on Twitter, I'll see someone say, oh, I got another rejection letter. I'm a sucky writer. I'm never going to make it. I'm such a failure. And, I wish I could reach through the internet and just grab their shoulder and say, first of all, everybody gets rejection. It's just the way the business is. It's nothing personal. It doesn't mean your writing is bad. It just didn't click for that person. And also, you can't go onto the internet. You can't go onto social media and talk about yourself in a negative way, because if you do that, why should I think anything else of you? Why would I think otherwise? Because if a project comes up, because I like to, a friend of mine works for a program that helps writers, and he'll occasionally come to me and say, hey, do you know anyone who has like a shark script, or someone who has a heist kind of film? And I will and sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And if I don't, I'll just put it out to my social media network. I'll say, hey, everybody, I've got a producer, or I've got someone looking for a heist movie, or someone looking for a shark movie. Let me know, and I'll pass it along. But if someone constantly is, I'm seeing their posts or their tweets or whatever, and it's always about, oh, I suck, I'm so bad, I'm such a failure, I'm not going to think of you.
Right.
And if you get back to me, I'll still try to help you, but I'm not going to be as confident about your chances, because you don't have any faith in your writing. So why should anybody else?
Yeah.
I think that's like a growing pain, definitely, because we had a couple episodes ago, we were talking about, resolutions that we wanted to make for ourselves this year as a craft. And like, this is the first year I've actually changed my job title on all of my media accounts to writer, as kind of that reinforcement of, yes, this is who I am. I am a writer. And I think having that confidence in yourself is not easy. It's definitely a challenge, but I definitely think it's something you can grow into. But you got to start somewhere.
Exactly. No, because I noticed, I think, Chris, you said this at the beginning, like, a lot of us are technically struggling screenwriters. We're struggling to break in.
Yeah.
But I think using the phrase struggling, I guess it just has almost a negative connotation for me, that it makes it sound like you're really trying hard and nothing's happening. I think if you just call yourself a screenwriter, that's still the same thing. The fact that you're still trying to break in, or you're still trying to establish yourself professionally, that's just a minor detail. Because if someone has asked, if someone asks you, oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm a screenwriter. Oh, the first question they always ask, oh, have I seen anything you've written?
Yeah.
And they say, have I seen anything you've written? And I always say, not yet.
And that's a fair call. And I think if you go back to the mantra of you are what you do, because and Paul, you pointed out this, very well. I may stop using the term struggling at any point in our podcast because of that very point, because everyone feels that is a negative word. And if you are what you do, it shouldn't matter to anybody if, you say you're a writer or a screenwriter and they look at you like you've just like put out a lofty air about yourself rather than the fact that, well, I have evidence because I put in the work. I have something to show. If you can, for yourself, if you have that, evidence for yourself, you don't need to explain that to anybody and take the conversation in the direction of where you're having to justify your screenwriting to anybody. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, exactly. Because I think, our screenwriter, even those who have had stuff produced and they have established themselves as professionals, they're still struggling as well. It's not just because they've had some good fortune and some successes doesn't mean they're still trying as hard as they can to make the next thing work. So they've just had a little more luck at it, a little more opportunities than the rest of us have. So technically every screenwriter is a struggling screenwriter. And it reminded me, oh gosh, I can't even remember how many years ago this was. I was at a screenwriting conference in LA, and Shane Black was one of the panelists. This was just a long time ago, and he said he hates it when a writer calls themselves an aspiring screenwriter. He said you're either a screenwriter or you're not. If you're calling yourself an aspiring screenwriter, that means you want to write. A screenwriter actually writes.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you've had something produced or had something sold or whatever. If you are sitting there, ass in chair, and cranking out material, you are a screenwriter. You may not be getting paid for it, but you're still a screenwriter.
May I make a suggestion? If you write a screenwriting book, which you literally could based on your blog, when you title it "Ass in Chair," I would buy a screenwriting book.
I've heard so many other writers that I know use that expression. One of them is a professional. He definitely has established himself as a career, but he uses that phrase a lot, and he actually has written a book as well. But that's what it really comes down to. That if you are a screenwriter, you're a screenwriter. There are varying levels of success. You've written a script, great. You've written several scripts, fantastic. You've done well in contests, even better. You've sold something, optioned something, you've got representation, fantastic. But no matter what, you're still struggling to make the next thing happen.
Cool. So when it comes to networking, what would you recommend as like your first step? Let's brass tacks it for people who are just coming into, getting the networking thing down, regardless of whether or not, we're angling it with the focus and the lens of a screenwriter, but networking in general is intrinsic to all of our lives in terms of career strategy. But what is the first step in your opinion?
Well, see, that's the thing is I can't help but look at it through the lens of screenwriting because that's really where I've done a lot of my networking, especially the past 15, 20 years as social media started to grow and really expand. I think the first thing is be nice to people. Don't come into it expecting something from somebody else because that is an immediate turnoff, as we talked about earlier. Again, always make it about the other person. Ask them what they're working on. Find out about them. Make it about them because that makes you interested. And a lot of times when I've done that, when I've first connected with people and I talk to them about their projects and they talk to me about mine, it establishes literally a professional relationship. And I've maintained a lot of those because a lot of them are fantastic people and they're fantastic writers. And so I feel comfortable after I've established this relationship. If I have a script that I need some eyes on, I am more than comfortable sending them an email saying, hey, if you've got the time, and I always make sure I say that because if you have the time, I never come out and say, hey, will you give me notes? It's, hey, if you have the time, can you take a look at this and let me know what you think? And more than a few times, they come back to me with the same question every once in a while. And I'm happy to give notes for people, but you can't just come to me, a total stranger, say, hey, you don't know me, but will you give me notes on my script?
Okay,
people have done that.
I'll stop doing that. No, I haven't done that.
I was going to say, Paul, is Denise coming at you quite a bit? I'm just,
Well, I just one quick anecdote. So let's see, it's 2022. So last year, 2021. So at the end of 2020, I was kind of just tired of contests. So I was going to take the year off from contests because I was just tired of the whole thing. And I said, you know what? The best way that I can become a better writer is to read more scripts. And the best way to do that, I just put on Twitter. I said, hey, I am open to reading your script to give you notes. It's not going to be extensive, maybe 2 pages, 3 pages. But if you want me to read your script, take a look. Just let me know. And so I had like 75 people respond. and say,
Yeah.
yes, I want to read, please read my script. That'd be great. And more than a few offered to read something of mine. And so when I did the follow-up to all those 75, only 40 sent in their scripts. So the first 3 months of last year, I was going through about a script every other day, and working the notes and just giving my basic opinions. And this is what I think your script could use to improve. I never thought this is how I would do it, because that's not what it was about. It was about, I'm reading your script and this is my opinion, and here's what I think could help it be a better script. And so many people responded with, oh my God, these are fantastic notes. Thank you so much. This is really good. And what was really reinforcing for me was a couple of months later, I think it was in the summer, this one guy had written back to me. He said, I don't know if you remember, this was my script. And I did remember the script. And he said, I'd entered it in my first contest and I made quarterfinals.
Nice.
And he said, because I did an extensive rewrite based on your notes. And it really boosted my confidence. I was so excited to enter the script in the contest, and it made quarterfinals. I have no idea. I never heard back from him again if it made it to the semis, but he was just so happy that I was able to help him. And that made me thrilled, that because we all go through the imposter syndrome. Am I good enough?
Yeah.
Do I have any idea what I'm doing? And so when I give notes, I always worry the person's going to take it personally, or they're going to think, oh, you're so full of it. What are you talking about? You don't know anything about screenwriting. That just to get that kind of response, and he was so happy about it. That was just such a positive reinforcement for me, that it made me more confident in my abilities, that, hey, maybe I actually do know what I'm doing. And it was really nice to see. And I think that was one of the benefits of the networking, to tie it all back, that he was comfortable sending his script to me, and he was even more comfortable with the notes. He had confidence in what I had to say about his script, and then he made the changes that maybe he didn't use all of them, I don't know, but he was really happy and excited to start sending it out, maybe testing the waters of contests. And that's what's happened. And that really is what it comes down to from networking, is you are trying to help other people, but in a way you are helping yourself, but you're not being blatant about it.
Yeah. Here's an interesting question that is been popping up a lot lately. Do you think you need to be in LA to be an effective screenwriter?
If that's really become a big issue lately. If you want to get into television, you really have to. But for screenwriting, you don't, especially since lockdown began, 2 years ago now, that almost so much stuff is done on Zoom now. That this friend of mine I was referring to earlier, because I'm up in San Francisco, and he used to live here in the Bay Area, but last year he moved. Now he lives in Tennessee. But he is still a very busy writer, because he's had stuff produced before. So he's an established name, and he still has people contacting him, asking for projects or seeing if he'll do a rewrite. That it doesn't hurt for you to be in Los Angeles. You are able to meet with people a lot easier there, but it's not necessarily a total negative for you not to be there. I think, again, your odds and your chances improve if you are in Los Angeles, but it's not necessarily as mandatory as it used to be. I'm sure there are probably people who are in LA who would probably disagree with me, but that's just my take on it.
I don't know that I don't know that there are a lot of people that would disagree with you now. I mean, partially because of the pandemic, but shortly before, and I don't know if you've attended the Austin Film Festival, but that question is a recurring one, obviously, for people outside of the industry, and was posed there. And there were so many people, like, I remember hearing one literary manager say, and sorry, I fumbled over my words, literary, I'm remixing myself, literary manager, now I can speak properly, who answered that question with how she had clients that literally, there was one in Alaska who would only fly into LA for a meeting every once in a while, but the rest of the time he was writing up there, and that was it. I mean, there's flying in, which can be painful, but if you're established, I would see that, I'm sure, as being less of a challenge. But does that hurt in any way?
What, to not be there?
To not be there? Is it like on the other side of the coin?
Again, I couldn't really say, because I've had contact with a lot of people in LA, but I'm not there. So I'm still able to talk to people. People are still able to talk on the phone or Skype or Zoom or whatever your choice is. In fact, I know another writer. He recently broke back into the industry, and he's in Massachusetts. Cool. And he's still working his day job, but he's really busy as a screenwriter. So again, I think let me put it this way. If you are under a certain age and you don't have any really big commitments, that it's a lot easier for you to move to LA and start. But if you have a family, if you have an established job, that's a bigger challenge.
Yeah.
That some people, it's too hard for them to just pick up and relocate like that. But again, because of the internet and all of these new instantaneous means of communication, that it's not necessarily necessary for you to be in LA. That again, it doesn't hurt for you to be there, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary. Definitely not as much as it used to be.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's really good. I have another scenario for you.
Okay.
So, in all the great movies, there's always those Hollywood parties that, I don't particularly like, but everybody's like all schmoozy. I think it's the schmooze that I'm not good at. I work with a lot of actors and I have to schmooze them all day. So,
well, actors are a sensitive type.
They are sensitive, and then I'm just done with it. And so when time comes and I have to go out there, I'm like, oh gosh, I don't want to be like those people. So I think there's like a switch that I turn off. But in these movies, you see these people going around with business cards, and they're like, here's my card. Here's my card. How much of that is really true?
Well, I can honestly say since I'm not in Los Angeles, I don't really go to a lot of Hollywood parties. I also don't know if business cards are as much of a thing as they used to be.
That's what I've heard.
I think it's more about some people are more like kind of what kind of social media presence do you have? Yeah. And keep in mind, everybody's got their phones with them. So you can always say, maybe if you make a good connection with someone and they seem like someone you'd like to get to know, say, are you on Twitter? Are you on LinkedIn? I'm a man of a certain age, so I'm on Instagram, but I barely use it. My daughter, my daughter in college, she's like, you're on Instagram? Big question mark. So I said, yeah, but mine's like screenwriting and baking. So what do you want me to do?
Right.
So I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
No, so I don't really know about the business card thing, but again, it's about making the connection. So if you do find yourself at a Hollywood party, again, be yourself, try to enjoy it, always make it about the other person. And again, asking like, what are you working on these days? And because people will like to talk about it, or if there's something, there's always a unique question that kind of surprises people and they love the novelty of it. So Denise, you said you've read my blog. Have you read any of the Q&As that I've done?
Yes, I read one.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, what's the last question I always ask somebody?
Oh my gosh, you're going to put me on the spot. I don't remember.
That's okay. So I've done like over 100 of these interviews over the years. And so the first 10 questions are always about that person. Like, what's the last thing you read or watched that you thought was really well written? How'd you get your start in the industry? What are some golden pieces of advice you'd give writers? Contests, yes or no? How can people get in touch with you? But the 11th question, the one I always ask everybody, what's your favorite kind of pie?
Oh, that's a good one.
Because you either like it or you don't. And I'm not going to fault you. You soulless heathen for not liking pie. And some people say, well, I'm not really a dessert person, or I like a savory pie, or I actually like cheesecake more. But everybody has an opinion about it, and it's so unique a question that I love that everyone always says like, oh my God, this is like the best question I've ever gotten in an interview, because it makes it that much more memorable. So, why not? And so I like giving people that kind of little thrill that, this was an interview about screenwriting. What are you talking about pie? And it's like, well, actually, now that you're talking about it, I'm thinking about pie. And so it's just my particular way of making an impression. And people always remember it. And sometimes people will respond to the pie question more enthusiastically than they did to the rest of the interview, which is totally fine, because I want to make the whole interview experience a positive one for them. And if it involves asking them what's your favorite kind of pie, hey, so be it. I'm not going to complain.
Right. And Honestly, that's a brilliant one. It also humanizes things. It brings people out of this, okay, this laser focused idea of what can I learn from this person who is writing, or what they think about screenwriting? What can I gain or glean from this Q&A? But you've also brought them out to be a human being, which goes back to your earlier point, right? So um, when you're going to people, I mean, whether you're like doing this in a social media context, or if or at a party, which I know, Denise is all schmoozed out about. Um, but it sounds as though there's almost this composite marketing plan you have to have for yourself. Whether or not you need business cards, which I've found works well at film festivals. I don't know if you agree, but all that aside, it's like you need to know what your social media presence is. You do have to have some physical thing to leave behind, possibly, and that depends
Mhm.
upon the situation. But does a screenwriter need a website? And how overall in the composite picture, how do you build yourself a brand?
That's a great question. I think it really depends on how you want to present yourself. You can have a website. I know a lot of writers who do, but a lot of times their social media presence is really what it comes down to. That are you on Twitter a lot? Are you on LinkedIn? If you are, how do you act? Do you engage people? Are you just there? Do you just make snarky comments, which is not a good look?
Mm,
Do you really want to get to know these people? That's what it comes down to. Are you interested in establishing and maintaining a professional relationship? And I have been so fortunate to have connected with so many fantastic writers, especially on Twitter, that someone who I would just respond to, maybe like they had a good writing day, or they had a am I allowed to curse on the show?
Sure,
go right
absolutely.
ahead.
Okay, they had a shitty writing day.
Oh,
That,
cool.
and we've all been there. We've
Yeah.
had days, "Oh my god, I got 16 pages written today. Oh my god, I only got half a page written today." We have
Yeah.
all been there. So everybody sympathizes with you, but it also helps another writer to let them know you are supporting them. You encourage them. You have been in the exact same situation that they have. You get what they're going through, and you want to lift them up. You want to, boost them up even more. You want to you be their own little cheering squad. Hey, I'm sorry you had a bad day. That sucks. Tomorrow will be better. Don't worry about it. We all go through this. Or hey, that's great. Congratulations. All the best for another great writing day. That you have to you have to engage, because if you just sit on the sidelines and don't really do anything, who's going to notice you?
Hmm.
You can't just sit there and be quiet, because you're not going to get any results. It's kind of, as you would put it in the party example, it's like going to a party and just sitting on the couch and not really talking to anybody. Well, of course you're going to be miserable because you're not engaging anybody. But and it's really hard for writers to do that sort of thing, especially in person, because a lot of us are so introverted.
Right.
And you have to almost force yourself to be an extrovert. I'm not saying you have to be the life of the party, but you have to be engaging. You have to make the other person feel like you want to be talking to them, which in turn will hopefully make them want to be talking to you. And you can just engage in a nice conversation. It doesn't have to be, oh, bragging about yourself, because that's a big turn off. That it can be, again, asking about what they're working on, or hey, did you see that panel that William Goldman's dead, so that Lawrence Kasdan was there. Wow, William Goldman was there. Well, that was a hell of a panel. Um, but did you see
It was
like
a
the Lawrence
seance too.
Kasdan? Yeah, exactly. Did you see that Lawrence Kasdan panel? Man, wasn't that great? Or what kind of if you're at a conference or a film festival, hey, did you see that film from Guatemala, the zombie movie there? It just people will engage with you, but you have to be engaging to them, but also not come across as smarmy, or I'm just talking to you because I want to get something out of you.
Right. Huh. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, no, I'm making notes.
Okay.
Um, since we are so, I mean, our work is like very isolating. Um, you can spend so much time sitting in front of a computer, but you're also a dad, and I know you have a day job.
Mhm.
So, and you're writing and you're reading other people's scripts. So, how much of your time is actually spent networking?
Well, that's the great thing about networking, is that, especially on the internet, that you can do it 24/7. You can do it as much or as little as you want. that for me, I don't really designate time for it. Usually, especially when I'm doing my day job, because when I have a little downtime, I'll just go on to social media, maybe Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and I'll see maybe someone I know has said something or they have some kind of announcement that they wanted to make, and I'll like it. And if I know them a little better than most, I'll send them a note or even a DM. And sometimes they'll just have something to say and I will respond. And it's not a big time suck, but it is easy to fall into that trap that you start looking and responding to things, and before you know it, 30 minutes has gone by.
Right.
So you have to be careful about it, not really throw yourself into it, but maybe be just casual about it, I guess might be the best way to put it.
Do you ever get to a point in your day where you're like, oh, I just need to turn everything off?
No, because I think for me, because I have so much going on during the day that I
Mhm.
try to designate time when I'm going to work on something. That sometimes I might put aside an hour. Okay, this is the hour I'm going to send out query letters, or I'm going to
Mm.
research who I could send query letters to, or this is the hour I'm finally going to sit down and read my friend's script that I've been putting off for a week.
Right.
Or okay, this is the day I really want to try and get to the end of Act 2 in my outline today. Or I'm going to sit down. If I write anything, I'm going to do at least 3 pages. If I do at least three, that's great. If anything more is a bonus. That it's about setting realistic, achievable goals for yourself in
Right.
terms of time management. Because I think you were talking about resolutions, like a lot of writers might start off the year saying, oh, I'm going to get a manager this year. Okay,
Right.
well, that's great. But what are you going to do to accomplish
To
that?
accomplish that. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because as we all know, like one of the most common questions at a conference or a panel, how do I get an agent/manager? Well, you have to do the work at it. And everyone's like, well, well, what do you mean? How do I do the work? And I said, okay, first, this is my recommendation. You get a subscription to IMDb Pro,
Mhm.
and maybe you have a couple of scripts under your belt already. You're ready to start showing them around. You want people to start looking at them. Go on to IMDb Pro, find the producers of maybe 5 to 10 films that are similar or comparable to yours, and see if they have contact information. And put together a very short and to the point query letter. There are fantastic examples all over the internet where you can find them. Just try to keep it at least half a page at the very most, because you want to grab their attention as soon as possible, get to the point as soon as possible, and be done as soon as possible. And then start sending out queries. And the thing is that you can send out 100 query letters. You might get 3 saying, yeah, sure, send it, I'll read it. You
Right.
might get, and this has happened to me, I'll send out 100, maybe 5 will say, sure, I'll read it. I'll get 10 or 15 who said, thanks, but this doesn't sound like something we're interested in, or just thanks, but no thanks. And you'll also get like 20 that said, this email address does not exist.
Yes.
Like, well, okay, well, you don't take it personally. You don't be like, oh man, this sucks. You can't just sit there and gripe about it. If you send it, forget it, move on to the next thing.
Yeah, that's hard. It's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge, but also writing a good query letter, I think, is an art, to be able to talk about yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm very long-winded in my writing, so to put it all in a paragraph, that's a challenge.
Well, that's it, because you want to grab their attention as fast as possible. So maybe like, what's the hook about your script? You could say like, dear Chris, hey, what if what if aliens came and they looked nothing like I don't know, it's just a terrible example. But you get the point. So what's the unique hook about your script? What is it so that sets it apart from all the rest? And someone said, oh my God, another alien script. And I made this joke at a writer's call over the weekend. If my friend and I were role playing at a Hollywood party, I said, if I get pitched another script about a hitman coming out of retirement, I'm just going to shoot myself.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
So
there's a lot of regurgitation.
Yeah. So
well,
what's the unique angle about your script that it sets it apart from anything else like it?
Right. And if it's another alien script, I mean, my first joke on that one is like, that's a probing question, isn't it?
I
got nothing but dad jokes here. I'm just saying. But that leads right into another thought, is like elevator pitches. I mean, once you're, networking is like the foot in the door, and then you have to be ready to tell them something, just like, in your query letter. But the elevator pitch and refining it, one, do you want to bring? You don't want to bring that up on the first, hello, or anything
Well, I
like
think
that.
it depends on the scenario. Like if you found yourself in an elevator with an established Hollywood producer, you don't want to come across as too eager, but I'm just trying to think of a scenario where you would have the opportunity to do your 5-second pitch, but I think it depends on how comfortable the situation it is. But really, with the 5-second pitch, I think it comes down to what is the core, I don't know, element of your story. Because I mean, I have a couple of scripts. Like if you say, what's the 5-second pitch for this? Well, okay, well, I have this Western and my pitch is it's a female Indiana Jones in the Wild West plus trains. And people hear that and like, oh my God, that's a movie I want to see. Or I have, Jewish cook in a Chinese restaurant. And they say, that sounds
Rock
hilarious.
on.
Exactly. See, so it's really about what, maybe it comes down to the high concept angle, or it's really what is the unique detail about your story that just sets it apart from the rest.
Cool. And do cold calls actually work anymore? And where would you start?
That's a really tricky question. It depends on who you're calling and who you get in touch with, because a lot of times you'll get the assistant.
Get the assistant.
That I don't do cold calls as much as I used to, probably because I was never comfortable doing them. I'm just more comfortable sending a query letter. But you can cold call. It's all about, sometimes a friend of mine said it's about sounding confident and just trying to present the material, but don't be forceful or pushy about it. Just kind of say, do you accept queries? Would you be interested in reading this script? That I'm also not sure if cold calls are really as much of a thing as they used to be. Probably because so many people do emails that a lot of times the assistant might just tell you to email the query in the first place. So you really have to be careful about it, because a lot of times it's no unsolicited material. So that's something to keep in mind. So they may not be they may hear you start to do your pitch over the phone and just hang up. I mean, it's a possibility.
Yeah, it's actually, from my little experience doing, I wouldn't really call it a cold call, but I followed up with people and I've spoken to assistants, and it's more like, okay, I met this person at this such and such, and I'd just like to follow up with a thank you letter for them taking the time to speak with me. If I could, email, if you have an email address, I could send that to you. That would be great. So it's more like getting information from the assistants. Sometimes they're helpful, sometimes they're not, but
Well, that's true. I can't remember which directory it was, but it had a section like, we accept queries, no queries, or don't even bother. And so some of the places that I would always try to do my homework about them, again, the IMDb Pro subscription, that sometimes you might get conflicting information. One might say, yes, we accept queries, and the other one might say, no, we don't. So
Right.
I would try to, if there was a phone number, I would call and say, yeah, I'm just trying to confirm, do you accept queries?
Right.
And sometimes they would say, maybe 9 times out of 10, they'd say, actually, we don't, or we're not taking any
Right.
new clients. The best email response I ever got was, I sent a query letter for a script, and it was to a literary agency, and they wrote back, say, actually, we don't represent writers. Wait, you're a literary agency. How can you not represent writers?
Wow.
That's a switch.
Yeah.
What did they represent?
I don't know.
Not writers. Not writers.
Apparently not.
I wonder if they're still in business.
So I feel a little bit more confident. I know I've been challenging myself to get into some groups. I do a lot of reading for colleagues and people that I don't know. I get those random emails as well. Chris and I have read many a script together.
Sure.
Yeah, we have.
And I like it. I think it's definitely a way to improve your writing, but the whole reason Chris and I started this podcast was to help other people and learn for ourselves as we grow. So that is something that I would recommend if you're just a little tentative about getting your foot in the social media waters.
Well, here's my suggestion to you, and really to anybody who is starting to kind of get their feet wet in social media. Just set yourself a very small but realistic and achievable goal each day. Try to connect with 5 other writers. That's
Hmm.
it,
Yeah.
just 5. You can follow them. I'm not saying to try to set yourself up as their best friend. Just follow them, and maybe you'll see their tweets. And if they tweet something that you agree with, respond to it. Say, hey, that's a great point, or hey, I love that movie too, or hey, that's a really good point. What do you think about this? Now, I'm not saying to really engage that much, but just try to start a very pleasant, polite conversation. And you can do that on Twitter, and you could try it on LinkedIn. I know a lot of people who tried. One friend of mine, he only connects with um, representatives and people within the industry, primarily directors and producers. And if someone who is not involved in that, he won't connect because he's really trying to establish a professional identity via LinkedIn. And so far, he's had some moderate success. So it's not that hard. It only takes you maybe 20, 30 seconds
Yeah.
to find some screenwriters on Twitter or LinkedIn to connect with. There's also, at least I hope I get the days right. I think Script Pipeline, they have like a kind of like a happy hour thing on Fridays, like it's 5 p.m. Pacific, maybe 5 to 7 Pacific, and it's the hashtag Pipeline Writers, and it's just all these writers come in and they just start talking about stuff, maybe something they're working on, or maybe a movie they saw, or whatever and you can just jump right in and take part in the conversation. There's a lot of comments going by, but it's really informative, and you get to get a glimpse into what networking can really be like. And I've done that a couple of times, and my schedule doesn't really allow for it as much anymore.
Right.
And I think oh gosh, I hope I got her name right, Jeanette Bowerman, I hope that's right, really hope I got that right, from I can't remember the company, but she does a script chat on Sunday afternoons, I think 5 p.m. I think also Pacific, but sometimes they'll have a guest or they'll just have people talking. And it's just great because you can sit there, you don't have to take part, but if you want to, you can, and you can pipe in occasionally with your 2 cents, and maybe you'll connect with some writers, or you'll see some names that keep going by and think, oh, hey, I really like what that person has to say. And you can click on them and maybe read about them on their bio or see what other things they've tweeted about and follow them, and maybe they'll follow you back.
That's a really great suggestion. One other thing I would suggest is that don't be afraid to ask questions about how to do something with social media. Like for me, it wasn't Twitter so much as a problem, but Instagram. Mm-hmm. I was encouraged to get it by a previous cast that I would work with. They were like, you have to get an Instagram. I'm like, great. Now it's pictures of my dog. So
nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong. She's adorable. But like, I didn't know how to do I just didn't know how to do some things. And, I found a youngin', as I like to call them, and I asked them, I was like, hey, if you have 5 minutes, can you show me how to do this? And more likely than not, they'll be like, yeah, sure. Come on over here, Grandma. Mm-hmm. And, and then show me how to do it. So don't be afraid to ask questions. There's definitely a learning curve to some of that stuff, and you have to jump in.
And the brilliant part is, and Paul, you already pointed this out, it doesn't take very long to go on once you've established an account on any one of these. It doesn't take long to find a screenwriting group on Facebook. There's plenty of free resources for screenwriters that to get information. There's more free information out there than you can shake a stick at. Mm-hmm. We're certainly free here on Telling the Show. I don't want to say how free we are because I don't want to over or undersell us. But at the same time, I'll tell you, LinkedIn is great because from my perspective, it's always going to be the professional one, and it's a numbers game because it's always about leads with people on LinkedIn. But at the same time, LinkedIn is very good for networking from a professional standpoint and getting your next job, which may or may not necessarily apply to the film industry, but it could. It just depends. But I think Twitter is great for 2 reasons. One is because plenty of screenwriters are out there, established and otherwise. And like you pointed out, Paul, but also it's a great chance to write one-liners because you only have so many characters to actually show some writing prowess. So at that point, you can actually just, put something out there and see and almost like you could actually try gaming with, that's a great way to start a relationship with, someone out there. I don't know if you would agree, Paul, but if someone says, maybe we do a back and forth kind of thing over Twitter and responses and see, what kind of idea pops up, that might be fun, right?
It could be. I mean, you have to figure out what works best for you because everybody's path to success is a different one. So what works for me is not going to work for Denise, and what works for Denise is not going to necessarily work for you. But you have to figure out what is going to work the best for you and then see what you can do to build on that. And I want to circle it back to what you were talking about with the writing groups on Facebook, that there are a lot of
There are a
screenwriting
lot.
groups.
Yeah.
But the thing
Sure.
is, you have to be careful because I used to be part of one, I think it's just called screenwriting, but it had like 25,000 members.
Yeah.
And a lot of those members were angry, and they were
Yes.
very vitriolic in their comments that if you said something that, well, I don't understand this, you would be bombarded with people telling you what an idiot you were, and that
Yes.
they were the know all be all about all of this information. I'm like, well, I'm not really here to have you yell at me over the
Right.
internet. So do a little research, maybe find a group that seems better for you. Maybe there's one about your genre preferences, or it just seems like, hey, this seems like a really nice bunch of people that you have to wade through the swamp, so to speak, before you find a really nice area that you would want to hang out in.
Right.
And
Find the group that fits for you.
exactly,
Right.
Yes.
exactly. And also, don't be afraid if you disagree with someone. You don't have to take take their abuse about, because I've had more than a few people when I was in these larger groups, they would really just, it was the digital equivalent of yelling at you.
Yeah,
And
it's
like,
awful.
well, I came here asking for advice, or I came here seeking, hey, does anyone know anything about this? Like, why would you want to talk about that? That's a terrible idea for a show. It's like,
Right.
well, that's not what I'm here for. I don't have to take this. So if you don't feel like you need to stick around.
And I like the point
Agreed.
yeah, absolutely. I agree with that completely. And I like the point you pointed out just a little bit ago, research. I mean, all of us as screenwriters, we're going to do some research, at least a little bit into what we're writing about. The same is true for career strategy, right? So,
Oh, very, very much so that, so many writers will, especially newer writers, will go online, maybe on Twitter, say, hey, can anyone help me get a manager?
Right.
Well, that's not how it works. You have to do the research, find a manager. Again, IMDb Pro subscription. Do your homework. Find a manager that might be a good fit for you. Because I've gone through this myself, trying to research who would be open to this query about this kind of script. Well, this production company or this management firm, they only deal with comedies, or they specialize in horror. They're not going to be interested in my Western. So it takes a little time to get through all of that information,
Yeah.
but you have to find what works best for you. And a lot of people are like, well, do I have to? Like, yeah, that's how it works. That's how you have to do it.
Yeah, that's the process.
it's work. I mean, people do need to
It
remember
is.
that there is a job aspect to it as much as there is an art aspect to it, and you don't want to spray and pray like you're trying to hit a hornet's nest. Although,
Exactly.
I don't know if that ever works, but
It just seems, I mean, I know people who do the blanket emails, and it just seems like a waste of time and effort, that you could be so much more effective in your approach by maybe finding 20 to 30 people who'd be much more open to your query than the 3,000 you just sent it to.
Absolutely.
absolutely.
So what do you say? Do you want to change gears and have a little fun?
Always.
Okay. So we have a segment that we call Logline Thunderdome.
Yeah.
Basically, 2 log lines enter and only one makes it out because it fulfills all of the log line requirements. Because you were going to be our guest today, I wanted to tailor the log line to be something about a story with a big idea, whether it's challenging or inspirational or something like that. But basically, it's a story with a big idea.
Okay.
And I am going to play this awesome. Well, I don't have the titles. So, Chris, play the titles.
Play the titles. Oh, wait. Gosh darn. Do we have them here still?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I have it. Let's do it.
Okay. All right.
Very cool. Very cool
Yes.
titles. Yeah.
We usually have music running behind it.
There are
but
music. but I don't have the music. Okay. Because I am still winning, I will let you go first.
Oh, shoot. I thought I had the last one, but okay, fine.
You did have the last one, but I'm still balls in my court. Go ahead.
Okay, so this one, it's an action thriller. A police academy dropout gets her chance to be a detective when she witnesses a psychopathic pro football player commit murder during a game and makes herself a target to draw the player out and bring him to justice.
Wow. Is that an already produced story?
Nope.
Is that yours?
I'm not sure I want to say just yet.
Okay. All right. So say it one more time.
Sure. A police academy dropout gets her chance to be a detective when she witnesses a psychopathic pro football player commit murder during a game and makes herself a target to draw the player out and bring him to justice.
Am I allowed to ask questions?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Okay, so I have an issue with the fact that she sees him commit murder during a game.
Mm.
Why would she be it makes it sound like she's the only one who sees this happen. And assuming this is going to be in a stadium full of people. So what prevents her from being the only one who's seeing it? Or what makes her the only one who sees it?
Very good question. I'm sorry.
My question is similar. It says police academy dropout, but then she has a chance at being a detective. But if she dropped out of police academy,
pretty big leap, isn't it?
She wouldn't be a detective. Yeah.
So.
But I do like like maybe she was the bottom of her class. Sure. And then, this is her last, or, she's not a good detective. This is her last chance to prove herself.
So yeah, maybe like police academy screw up.
Yeah.
So, but again, I'm coming back to the whole, where would she see the murder? Unless I'm trying to think, maybe she sees the football player commit murder, but it's not on the field, because that's just too that's too impossible to believe.
That's true. It's hard to expect. I'm sorry. I'm talking over you. Go ahead, please.
That's okay. No, I was trying to think of like, what's a scenario that she would see this happen, but she would be the only one who saw it. Maybe it's after hours at the stadium, or he's having a fight with his girlfriend. She sees something. She's the only. You have to set it up so she's the only witness.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, the field's wide open. It could have been like she's somehow got access to, and I don't know why, because honestly, how do we fit that in a log line as it is? But the circumstances is she could see it happening at halftime somewhere in the locker room or something. How would she have access to that?
I hate to sound like a producer. Does it have to be on the field?
No, it was. See, it doesn't have to be on the field at all. And my creative brain is going to like, it's during a game, but we don't say where or when. So that one, I think, is an Achilles heel to this log line, personally speaking.
Yeah, because I would think like if it were in the locker room or it's in one of the underground tunnels in the stadium, that would be a much better scenario, because that can also ramp up the thriller aspect, because she's trapped, or maybe she stumbles upon him doing this and it's during the game or something and he's not supposed to be there. I mean, I'm just, again, off the top of my head, but I think the basic idea is really good, but I think it's the details of the story that keep raising questions.
True, and that means refining the log line. And because here's the problem with log lines is we get all these rules about don't add too many words, or it's got too many details. You have to carefully select all your adjectives and that sort of thing. But it's very clear if it's raising more questions, then it's not really doing its job, right?
Right, because it's about the protagonist with a flaw. They have a goal. This antagonist is preventing them from achieving that goal. And what happens if they don't achieve that goal?
Right. Conflict, character, and concept.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I feel like you're already going down, but mine might not be that great this week. So,
Denise, you're going to win. I already know you're going to
win. So my log line is Earth is overpopulated and New York City has 40 million starving, poverty-stricken people forced to eat a food called Soylent. But when an efficient detective is assigned to a murder investigation of the Soylent Industries CEO, he inadvertently discovers the disturbing secret ingredient. And that is from a produced movie.
That's Soylent Green. I'm sorry.
Yes, yes, it is. And do you know that movie takes place in 2022?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
and equally ironic is that there is actually a chocolate bar out there, a protein bar called Soylent.
Called Soylent, yeah.
And they weren't even aware of the movie.
I think apart from the logline itself is a little wordy. I think it could probably be narrowed down to maybe at least 10 to 15 words less. But I think the basic idea is there. I'm always on the fence about whether or not you give away the big twist in a story and for a log line.
Do you think that is giving away the twist? Like, are you suggesting that it's cannibalism, or is it that just where your mind goes?
Can you read the latter half of it again?
Sure. Detective is assigned to the murder investigation of the Soylent Industries CEO. He inadvertently discovers the disturbing secret ingredient.
Yeah, that does. Yeah, see that. Well, it's hard because it's made such an impression on pop culture,
right?
So it's hard to look at that and not know what the secret ingredient is.
Yeah.
The secret. I think I got to say of the two log lines, that's probably the stronger one.
Right.
It doesn't raise any questions, but I think it could definitely be whittled down to something a little more tight and efficient.
Yeah, I actually had a big problem with the first half because I felt like you needed to give the reader an idea that this took place in the future. And that, like, you have to set up the problem. The problem is that there's no food and you're eating this stuff, Yeah,
because what was it? Something like 40 million people in New York. I was thinking that's a lot of information to process. I was thinking, well, why not just say in a future where Earth is drastically overpopulated and the food resources are scarce, a company comes up with an amazing new food, but there's a hideous secret about it.
That is so much better.
But that doesn't have a protagonist in it. But that is easily fixed.
Right. But I want to say that while between the two log lines, Denise basically reverse engineered hers, unless Denise that you got that from somewhere else. Did you write the log line for Soylent Green there?
No, I took some of it from different places and then I made the second half myself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So first off, Paul, thank you for your notes, by the way, about mine. Just to be complete, I'm trying to learn from everything that we've talked about in the last hour and make sure that I'm grateful and hopefully coming across as grateful, but not sounding like I'm smarmy. Probably sucking at it right now. But
it's fine.
But you know what's funny is as we're talking, I'm realizing all I had to do was cut 3 words and this whole thing would have been fine. During a game, I could have cut those 3 words and it would have been even more concise.
Yeah, it would have been stronger. I think, again, some of the word choices rather than Police Academy Dropout.
Yeah.
But the general idea is still there. But yeah, I think if you drop out during a game, it is much more effective a log line.
Yeah, it does avoid some of those questions. I want to say that I know it has echoes of sudden death in The Last Boy Scout, but but then again, nobody really remembers sudden death unless you're a Jean-Claude Van Damme fan.
Well, I'm also a Pens fan, so I know that was filmed at the Civic Arena. So
there you go. But I'm always a fan of going after something where it's that. Yeah, it's fine if it's something you've seen before, but what's your angle? What are you trying to speak to in that one? So.
That's a big thing of screenwriting to begin with, familiar but different.
Right. So, but not to be outdone, Soylent Green. I mean, come on. I mean,
yeah,
Denise. Like, first of all, mad props for bringing up something fairly prescient. To be honest.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, but prescient.
Yes. It was just on the other day. So Turner Classic Movies.
Was it the Charlton Heston Film Festival?
No, I wish it was. That would be awesome.
Like that and the Omega Man.
Yes.
Planet of the Apes. Come on.
Some of the Planet of the Apes movies. Yeah.
Oh man, I always wanted to see Jim Carrey do Planet of the Apes just so I could hear him do his impression of Charlton Heston.
Oh, what you really need to do is you need to track down Dana Gould as Dr. Zaius, and he's talking about like Dr. Zaius as if he were a Hollywood player. It's really good stuff.
Oh, I will check that out. That's
we gotta look
brilliant.
that up. Yes.
Man has no place with ape. The sooner he is exterminated, the better.
He talks about like about the behind the scenes production of Planet of the Apes as Dr. Zaius, as if he were an actual actor. It's hilarious stuff.
Gotta check that out.
I know what Chris is doing later.
That depends. I may be rewriting a log line because I got some good advice. Just saying.
Well, you can bring it back to the competition chamber in the future.
You're allowing that? My
Yeah.
God, you're generous.
Yes. I know it's a new year. Paul, I want to thank you so much for all your advice and your suggestions, because I actually took about 2 pages of notes.
Oh, I'm glad I was effective today.
Absolutely.
Yes, always effective. And I want to thank you for your time, because I know you're very busy. We put up all your contact information. So definitely reach out and sign up for that blog. It actually is very charming. I think there's a little bit of humor in there, which makes it more fun to read. And I enjoy it. So, sign up for that blog. And what else? What else do I have to say, Chris?
Well, I mean, I hope you'll allow us, Paul. I mean, again, I'm likewise with Denise. Thank you so much for your generosity of your time. I hope you'll allow us to connect with you on Twitter.
Please do. It is. I am at maximum. My Twitter is at maximum_Z, because I think I tried to get at maximum Z, but it was taken. And again, from the top of the show, it's not maximums.
That was my fault. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. It's totally fine. It's totally fine. No, I love connecting with people on Twitter. I try to help out when I can. But I'm kind of cutting back on offering to read, because I don't need another deluge of scripts.
Yeah,
understandable. Well, with that, folks, we got to let you know that you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn by looking for, you can email us if you want to go old school with tellingtheshow@gmail.com. You can search for us on Facebook and Twitter the same way, as well as LinkedIn, Instagram, and certainly YouTube. Hopefully you're watching this and our illustrious podcast on YouTube as well. We got some great interviews coming up, and reach out because we want to hear from you. We want to hear what you love, and hopefully not hate, but if you hate it, let us know. And Denise, do you have any departing words of wisdom?
I actually do have some departing words of wisdom. Are you ready for this?
Embracing myself.
Okay. The comfort zone is nothing else but a graveyard for your dreams and ideas.
Ooh, who said that?
I have no idea.
Cite your sources, folks. That's the lesson.
I mean, I looked for a source. I couldn't find out who said it, but it speaks to me because, like I said, I'm good on this medium. I'm good walking into a room of 100 actors and telling them what's what, but it's the one-on-one conversations that are most intimidating.
Which means you've probably been scared out of your mind every time we've had just a one-on-one conversation.
Because you're familiar. It's the fear of making that awful first impression, I know is not going to happen, but you just never know.
If everyone knew just how charming you are, that you wouldn't need to be worried. Just saying.
Aw, thanks.
Yeah. You're still winning ahead of me on Logline Thunderdome, but
I sure am. Don't forget it. Don't forget it.
Someday I'll get
All right. Thank you so much, Paul. It has been a pleasure. I really appreciate your time. And you've been an awesome guest. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. You guys do a great show. And I wish you all the best. And, Chris, if you need help with log lines, you know where to find me.
Absolutely. And I hope you'll come back again for another session with us.
I would be happy to.
Awesome.
So before we go, I do have to ask both of you.
Yes.
So tell me, what's your favorite kind of pie?
Oh my gosh. My favorite kind of pie is going to be, I actually don't like fruit pies, but I'm going to say chocolate cream pie.
Okay. That's a good one.
Blueberry.
With or without ice cream?
Oh, I mean, I'm an ice cream fiend, so I
Okay.
must have that scoop with it. But so
Mhm.
naturally, I'm trying to get a moratorium on that right now because I'm rocking the dad bod.
Good choices all around.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for listening, and you'll hear from us soon.
Thanks, everybody.